Fideism is an epistemological theory which maintains that faith is independent of reason, or that reason and faith are hostile to each other, and faith is superior at arriving at particular truths. The word fideism comes from fides, the Latin word for faith, and literally means faith-ism. Theologians and philosophers have responded in various ways to the place of faith and reason in determining the truth of metaphysical ideas, morality, and religious beliefs. A fideist is one who argues for fideism. Historically, fideism is most commonly ascribed to four philosophers: Pascal, Kierkegaard, William James, and Wittgenstein, with fideism being a label applied in a negative sense by their opponents, but which is not always supported by their own ideas and works or followers. There are a number of different forms of fideism. Overview. Alvin Plantinga defines fideism as the exclusive or basic reliance upon faith alone, accompanied by a consequent disparagement of reason and utilized especially in the pursuit of philosophical or religious truth. The fideist, therefore, urges reliance on faith rather than reason in matters philosophical and religious, and therefore may go on to disparage the claims of reason. The fideist seeks truth, above all, and affirms that reason cannot achieve certain kinds of truth, which must instead be accepted only by faith. Plantinga's definition might be revised to say that what the fideist objects to is not so much reason, per se. It seems excessive to call Blaise, Pascal anti-rational, but evidentialism, the notion that no belief should be held unless it is supported by evidence. History. Theories of truth. The doctrine of fideism is consistent with some, and radically contrary to other theories of truth. Correspondence theory of truth, pragmatic theory of truth, constructivist epistemology, consensus theory of truth, coherence theory of truth, subjectivism. Some forms of fideism outright reject the correspondence theory of truth, which has major philosophical implications. Some only claim a few religious details to be axiomatic. Tertullian, I believe because it is absurd. The statement, credo quia absurdum, often attributed to Tertullian, is sometimes cited as an example of such a view in the Church Fathers, but this appears to be a misquotation from Tertullian's De Carne Christi. What he actually says in DCC 5 is, the Son of God died. It is by all means to be believed, because it is absurd. This, however, is not a statement of a fideist position. Tertullian was critiquing intellectual arrogance and the misuse of philosophy, but he remained committed to reason and its usefulness in defending the faith. Blaise Pascal and fideism. Another form of fideism is assumed by Pascal's wager. Blaise Pascal invites the atheist considering faith to see faith in God as a cost-free choice that carries a potential reward. He does not attempt to argue that God indeed exists, only that it might be valuable to assume that it is true. Of course, the problem with Pascal's wager is that it does not restrict itself to a specific God, although Pascal did have in mind the Christian God, as is mentioned in the following quote. In his Penseus, Pascal writes, "Who then will blame Christians for not being able to give reasons for their beliefs, since they profess belief in a religion which they cannot explain? They declare, when they expound it to the world, that it is foolishness, stultitia, and then you complain because they do not prove it. If they proved it, they would not keep their word. It is through their lack of proofs that they show they are not lacking in sense." Penseus, N. 233. Pascal moreover contests the various proposed proofs of the existence of God as irrelevant. Even if the proofs were valid, the beings they propose to demonstrate are not congruent with the deity worshipped by historical faiths, and can easily lead to deism instead of revealed religion. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, not the God of the philosophers. Hamann and Fideism considered to be the father of modern anti-racialism. Johann Georg Hamann promoted a view that elevated faith alone is the only guide to human conduct. Using the work of David Hume, he argued that everything people do is ultimately based on faith. Without faith in the existence of an external world, human affairs could not continue. Therefore, he argued, all reasoning comes from this faith. It is fundamental to the human condition. Thus all attempts to base belief in God using reason are in vain. He attacks systems like Spinozism that try to confine what he feels as the infinite majesty of God into a finite human creation. Kierkegaard's fides position of this general sort, that God's existence cannot be certainly known, and that the decision to accept faith is neither founded on, nor needs rational justification, may be found in the writings of Søren Kierkegaard and his followers in Christian existentialism. Many of Kierkegaard's works, including Fear and Trembling, are under pseudonyms. They may represent the work of fictional authors whose views correspond to hypothetical positions, not necessarily those held by Kierkegaard himself. In Fear and Trembling, Kierkegaard focused on Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Isaac. The New Testament apostles repeatedly argued that Abraham's act was an admirable display of faith. To the eyes of a non-believer, however, it must necessarily have appeared to be an unjustifiable attempted murder, perhaps the fruit of an insane delusion. Kierkegaard used this example to focus attention on the problem of faith in general. He ultimately affirmed that to believe in the incarnation of Christ, in God made flesh, was to believe in the absolute paradox, since it implies that an eternal, perfect being would become a simple human. Reason cannot possibly comprehend such a phenomenon, therefore, one can only believe in it by taking a leap of faith. James and the will to believe. American pragmatic philosopher and psychologist William James introduced his concept of the will to believe in 1896. Following upon his earlier theories of truth, James argued that some religious questions can only be answered by believing in the first place. One cannot know if religious doctrines are true without seeing if they work, but they cannot be said to work unless one believes them in the first place. William James published many works on the subject of religious experience. His 4 key characteristics of religious experience are passivity, ineffability, a noetic quality, and transiency. Due to the fact that religious experience is fundamentally ineffable, it is impossible to hold a coherent discussion of it using public language. This means that religious belief cannot be discussed effectively, and so reason does not affect faith. Instead, faith is found through experience of the spiritual, and so understanding of belief is only gained through the practice of it. Wittgenstein and Fideism. The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein did not write systematically about religion, though he did lecture on the topic. Some of his students' notes have been collected and published. On the other hand, it has been asserted that religion as a form of life is something that intrigued Wittgenstein to a great degree. In his 1967 article, Untitled Wittgensteinian Fideism, Kai Nielsen argues that certain aspects of Wittgenstein's thought have been interpreted by Wittgensteinians in a fideistic manner. According to this position, religion is a self-contained, and primarily expressive, enterprise, governed by its own internal logic or grammar. This view, commonly called Wittgensteinian Fideism, states that religion is logically cut off from other aspects of life, that religious concepts and discourse are essentially self-referential, and that religion cannot be criticized from an external point of view. Although there are other aspects that are often associated with the phenomena of Wittgensteinian Fideism, Kai Nielsen has argued that such interpretations are implausible misrepresentations of the position. It is worth noting, however, that no self-proclaimed Wittgensteinian actually takes Nielsen's analysis to be at all representative of either Wittgenstein's view, or their own. This is especially true of the best-known Wittgensteinian philosopher of religion, Z. Phillips, who is also the best-known Wittgensteinian fideist. In their book Wittgensteinian Fideism, D. Z. Phillips and Kai Nielsen debate the status of Wittgensteinian Fideism. Both agree that the position collapses, though they think it fails for different reasons. For Nielsen, the position is socially and politically irresponsible since it ignores prudential, practical, and pragmatic considerations as a basis for criticizing different language games. For Phillips, the position fails because it is not Wittgensteinian, and thus is a caricature of his position. Amongst other charges, Nielsen argues, most forcefully in an article entitled On Obstacles of the Will, that Phillips' Wittgensteinian view is relevantly fideistic and that it, therefore, fails on the grounds that it cannot account for the possibility of external, cultural criticism. Phillips, in turn, in the last article in the book, entitled Wittgenstein, Contemplation and Cultural Criticism, argues that the position is not Wittgensteinian at all, and that Wittgenstein's considered view not only allows for the possibility of external, cultural criticism, but also advances philosophical discussion concerning it. Fideism and presuppositional apologetics. Presuppositional apologetics is a Christian system of apologetics associated mainly with Calvinist Protestantism. It attempts to distinguish itself from Fideism. It holds that all human thought must begin with the proposition that the revelation contained in the Bible is axiomatic, rather than transcendentally necessary, else one would not be able to make sense of any human experience. To a non-believer who rejects the notion that the truth about God, the world and themselves can be found within the Bible, the presuppositional apologist attempts to demonstrate the incoherence of the epistemic foundations of the logical alternative by the use of what has come to be known as the transcendental argument for God's existence. On the other hand, some presuppositional apologists, such as Cornelius van Til, believed that such a condition of true unbelief is impossible, claiming that all people actually believe in God, whether they admit or deny it. Presuppositional apologetics could be seen as being more closely allied with foundationalism than fideism, though it has sometimes been critical of both. Protestantism. Martin Luther taught that faith informs the Christian's use of reason. Regarding the mysteries of Christian faith, he wrote, "All the articles of our Christian faith, which God has revealed to us in His Word, are in presence of reason sheerly impossible, absurd, and false, and reason is the greatest enemy that faith has." However, Luther conceded that, grounded upon faith in Christ, reason can be used in its proper realm. As he wrote, "Before faith and the knowledge of God, reason is darkness in divine matters. But through faith it is turned into a light in the believer and serves piety as an excellent instrument. For just as all natural endowments serve to further impiety in the godless, so they serve to further salvation in the godly. An eloquent tongue promotes faith, reason makes speech clear, and everything helps faith forward. Reason receives life from faith, it is killed by it and brought back to life." Luther's perspective did not last long, though, as the scholasticism Protestant theology assumed in the 16th century debates to fight Catholicism overwhelmed the original existential import of Luther's insight, such as the hardening of the doctrine of justification by faith into harsh theories of moral depravity. Calvinists, for their part, rejected Luther's doctrine of the two kingdoms in favor of a more monist conception of God's sovereignty, and thus constructed metaphysical light dogmas about subjects like double predestination, buttressing them with elaborate systems of logic. Apologetics thus became the main intellectual activity of Orthodox Lutherans and Reformed, a situation that caused grave crises for those churches with the arrival of the Enlightenment. Reactions to notions that authority and tradition need not necessarily guide human activity split Protestantism into numerous groups, some of which accepted the secularist program concerning reason and human capabilities. Meanwhile, some of the liberal strands within Protestantism developed affinities with Kantian and Hegelian theories about religion, with their respective dispositions against the biblical rendering of God as simultaneously transcendent and immanent. With the collapse of this tension, philosophical idealism moved into the vacuum, making claims that the human mind could somehow appropriate the divine nature. Logic and determinism would, in time, calcify this movement also, which, unlike the orthodox, abandoned much of its Christian trappings in favor of an outright human-centered cosmology and ethics. On the other hand, Calvinist scholasticism, possibly encouraged by the prestige of science, developed an ever more elaborate systematic theology that sought to make a rational, and thus, invulnerable, account of all God's dealings with humanity. These constructions would provide the intellectual foundation for the eventual fundamentalist movement in the U.S., and have remained influential to the present time within those circles. One might sum up those theologians' attitudes by the concise observation of the modern-day Calvinist thinker, Robert L. Raymond, when he claims, "Biblical faith is not a leap in the dark, it is not fideism." The 19th-century Princeton theologian Benjamin B. Warfield says, "We cannot be said to believe or to trust in a thing or person of which we have no knowledge. Implicit faith, in this sense, is an absurdity." Reformed Protestants hold that biblical faith is based upon the revelation of divine knowledge. Faith devoid of knowledge is believing the lie that leads to condemnation. To him, biblical faith wants nothing to do with a mindless Christianity. Compared to other religions, Christianity is preeminently the reasoning religion. The Bible commands people to know what they must believe in. However, other schools within Protestantism are more inclined to base their theology upon fides premises, especially those descending from thinkers such as Kierkegaard and Karl Barth. Both men confronted the increasing crisis within Western civilization in the late 19th and early 20th centuries and concluded that the various kinds of philosophical theology, whether liberal or conservative, were handmaidens in the cultural captivity of the faith, and that the faith had to be liberated from such shackles. Kierkegaard's espousal of non-rational methods of communicating the gospel, such as indirect communication and irony, and Barth's complete repudiation of natural theology signaled a return to Luther's concept of the faith as fiduciating God's grace through Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit, instead of primarily a censure to human ideas about the ontologically prior acts of God. Understandings of God in truth were increasingly defined in dialectical terms, as opposed to strict logic and metaphysical speculation. Neo-orthodoxy became the main school oriented around this new fides perspective, although several movements descending from it such as liberation theology and post-liberalism continue to bear the fides stamp, in that they have little or no interest in seeking philosophical or scientific prestige for their claims. They are content to retain Christianity's sense of mystery and paradox and regard attempts to relate those qualities to unaided human reason as inherently compromising.